They were once legends. Now you're about to see them as they truly were. Welcome to Colorized History Alive, where legends of the Old West no longer live on paper, but rise again through technology. Wyatt Earp, Billy the Kid, Annie Oakley. They once stirred fear, admiration, and curiosity across America for over a century. Today they return, not to justify themselves, but to confront the truth. Because once you look into their eyes, the past will no longer be blurry. Number 1. Wyatt Earp. 30 seconds of silence, tight as a cocked revolver. Then the first shot echoed through Tombstone. When the smoke cleared, Wyatt Earp was still standing, eyes locked, hand clenched around his heavy Colt. Wyatt Barry Stapp, Earp. A lawman, a gunslinger, a man obsessed with justice. Born in Illinois in 1848, he wasn't born a hero. He had worked as a buffalo hunter, saloon guard, stagecoach driver. But it was the shootout at the Oakley Corral in 1881 that turned Wyatt into a timeless symbol of the Wild West. In less than 30 seconds, he and his two brothers, along with Doc Holliday, gunned down 3 members of the cowboy gang. The press called him the last cleanup man of lawless lands. But in the years that followed, Wyatt was hunted by men seeking revenge and by the ghosts of those he had outgunned. He lived to the age of 80, dying in bed, something few gunfighters of that era could claim. The world called him a legend. Wyatt saw himself as simply the last man, who never drew too soon. Number 2, Jesse James. He wore no mask. In broad daylight, he walked into the bank with a smile as light as air. When he stepped out, someone was left on the floor. Jesse James, the most infamous outlaw in post-Civil War America, had just written another page of legend. Born in Missouri in 1847, Jesse was raised amid the chaos of war. He fought for the Confederacy, and when the war ended, he didn't lay down his gun. He changed his targets. With his brother Frank, Jesse formed the James Younger Gang, pulling off daring robberies, banks, stagecoaches, trains across the Midwest. To the poor, he was a folk hero. To the government, a nightmare. But Jesse didn't fall in a showdown. In 1882, he was shot in the back of the head by his own gang member, Bob Ford, while straightening a crooked picture on the walls. His death was immortalized in song. But the shadow of Jesse James never truly faded. Number 3. Calamity Jane. Her leather coat was covered in dust. Her revolver swayed at her side as she rode straight toward the gunfire, into a fight where most men wouldn't dare go. Calamity Jane, the woman who rode against history. Born Martha Jane Canary in 1852, she was the spirit of rebellion on the American frontier. No dresses, no manners. Jane lived like a man, drinking, cursing, riding through forests, firing wildly. She once worked with military supply caravans, befriended the legendary Wild Bill Hickok, and lived among some of the most feared gunmen of her time. They called her Calamity, bad luck, because disaster seemed to follow wherever she went. But others said she saved more lives than she ever threatened. In the end, Jane slipped into poverty and alcoholism, but she never lost the one thing no one could take: her freedom. She died without fanfare. But her soul still rides through the pages of history, never looking back. Number 4, Pat Garrett. He stepped into the barn. In the darkness, a voice asked, "Who's there?" Garrett didn't answer. He pulled the trigger, and history split in two. Patrick Floyd Garrett, the man who brought down Billy the Kid. Born in 1850, Garrett had worked as a cowboy and cattle driver until he was given a mission no one dared accept: to hunt down the fastest gun in the West. He didn't catch Billy once, but twice. After a bloody escape, Billy disappeared. But Garrett never gave up. In July of 1881, in a dark room at Fort Sumner, he shot Billy dead. No warning, no duel, just one shot. He was praised as a defender of the law. But for the rest of his life, Garrett was haunted by the legend he had killed. He tried politics and failed. He ran a ranch and lost everything. In the end, he was gunned down on the side of the road over a small debt. He killed a legend, but never became one. Number 5, Doc Holliday. His hand trembled slightly as he drew a card, not from fear, but from the disease eating away at his lungs. Yet when he reached for his gun, his hand was steady, because he was Doc Holliday, a man who survived on the death of others. John Henry Holliday, born in 1851, was a dentist by trade, but after being diagnosed with tuberculosis, he left his practice and walked straight into legend. From Georgia to Texas, Colorado to Arizona, Doc gambled, drew his gun, and lived each night as if it were his last. A close friend of Wyatt Earp, he stood at his side during the OK Corral shootout, said to be the first to fire. Known for his sharp tongue and lightning-fast draw, Doc didn't seek death, but he was never afraid to face it. He didn't die by a bullet, but by illness, alone in a cheap Colorado hotel with a glass of whiskey and a faint smile. "This is funny," he said before passing. "I'm dying in bed. Never thought I would." Number 6. Annie Oakley. A shot rang out. The coin spun through the air, then froze. A clean hole pierced its center. Annie Oakley lowered her Winchester rifle, eyes still fixed, like it was nothing. Born in 1860 in Ohio, her real name was Phoebe Ann Mosey. Annie grew up in poverty. By 15, she was hunting wild birds to feed her family, and soon became a sharpshooter. When she joined Buffalo Bill's Wild West show, Annie stunned crowds across America and Europe. She shot the cigarette from her husband's lips, hit coins in midair, shot backward using a mirror while riding a horse. In an era ruled by men, Annie Oakley proved that skill had no gender. She was both a performer and a champion for women's rights, and she never lost her humility. "Aim for the high mark," she once said, and like every bullet she ever fired, she always hit her target. Number 7. The Sundance Kid. He was quiet, always stood behind Butch Cassidy. But when the gun came out, the room went still. Because if Butch was the brain, Sundance was the trigger. His real name was Harry Alonzo Longabaugh, born around 1867. He joined the Wild Bunch, the boldest outlaw gang in the West, alongside Butch Cassidy. They robbed banks, trains, and vanished like smoke. With calm hands, perfect aim, and nerves of steel, Sundance became a silent legend, a man who did the dirty work cleanly. As the law closed in, Cassidy and Sundance fled to South America with Etta Place. Bolivia, 1908, cornered with nowhere left to run. No one knows exactly how they died. Some say they shot it out to the last bullet. Others believe they survived and changed names. The truth lies in the dust. But the name Sundance remains in the shadows, where the gun is always cocked. Number 8. Sitting Bull. Across the vast prairie, he stood like part of the land itself. No shouting, no threats, just eyes locked on a future being taken away. Sitting Bull, born around 1831, was the spiritual and military leader of the Lakota Sioux. He led a legendary resistance against the U.S. push into native lands. At the Battle of Little Bighorn in 1876, Sioux and Cheyenne warriors crushed General Custer's forces, a rare and proud victory. But Sitting Bull was more than a fighter. He was a prophet, a keeper of native spirit and culture. When the U.S. band forced his people into reservations, he was finally compelled to surrender. In 1890, he was killed by native police during a dispute, his death sending shockwaves across the country. Sitting Bull did not fall to sword or gun. He died for belief, a belief that still stands unbroken. Number 9. Geronimo. In the harsh canyon, the hoofbeats stopped. A lone figure emerged, no armor, no mask, just vengeance. Geronimo, the warrior who never backed down. Born in 1829, Geronimo was a leader of the Apache. After his wife and children were killed by Mexican soldiers, he swore to fight back. He launched dozens of raids against U.S. and Mexican forces, fighting like a shadow across the desert. No army could catch him easily. He ran, struck, vanished. He was the last symbol of unbroken native resistance. But in 1886, surrounded by over 5,000 American troops, he was forced to surrender, becoming the final holdout of the Indian Wars. Even in captivity, he remained a symbol of freedom, until his death in 1909. They took the land, but they never took Geronimo's spirit. Number 10. Butch Cassidy. The bank was quiet. The door swung open, and a man smiled. "Just borrowing a little, all right?" That man was Butch Cassidy. And from that day, The West would never be the same. Born in 1866 in Utah, his real name was Robert Leroy Parker. Butch started by stealing horses, then quickly rose to lead the Wild Bunch gang. They robbed banks and trains across the West, leaving clean scenes, no bloodshed, and vanished before anyone could react. Butch wasn't just known for strategy, but for charm. He smiled often, acted kindly, and always left behind the impression of a well-mannered gentleman. Relentlessly pursued, he fled with the Sundance Kid and Etta Place to South America. In 1908, Bolivia, 2 bodies were found after a shootout. No ID, no confirmation. Maybe Butch died there, or maybe he was somewhere else, grinning, reading a newspaper story about his own death. Number 11. Black Bart. People saw him standing in the road, black coat, hooded hat, a cloth covering his face. But what made him famous wasn't his gun. It was his poetry. Charles E. Bowles, known as Black Bart, was one of the strangest outlaws of the West. Born in 1829, a Civil War veteran, he became a poetic highwayman. From 1875 to 1883, he robbed over 25 Wells Fargo stagecoaches, alone, without firing a shot and never harming a soul. After each heist, he left behind a poem. Witty, mocking, and unforgettable. Black Bart wore a long coat, black hat, glasses, and a sack mask. No one was insulted, just relieved of their money. When caught in 1883, he was polite and remorseful. After prison, he disappeared from history. No one knows where or how he died. Black Bart left no body, only words, and a few lines of verse that still make banks uneasy. Number 12. John Wesley Harden. He killed his first man at 15. Wanted in 4 states, he escaped jail, shot lawmen, and studied law behind bars. John Wesley Harden, the man the West feared and never fully understood. Born in 1853 in Texas to a preacher's family, he quickly veered off the righteous path. Famous for drawing and firing in a single breath, Harden was said to have killed over 20 people, though he claimed the real number was 42. He once killed a man for snoring too loudly, another for staring too long. But in court, he defended himself using legal knowledge he'd learned in prison, and won. After 17 years behind bars, he became a lawyer, but the past never let go. In 1895, he was shot in the back at a bar in El Paso by a lawman he had once humiliated. He lived like a bullet, fast, straight, and without looking back. And in the end, he was stopped by one. Number 13. Buffalo Bill Cody. On stage, the man rode in circles on horseback, waving a gun and shouting, "This is the West!" The crowd roared. Buffalo Bill had just turned history into legend. William Frederick Cody, born in 1846, became one of the greatest cultural icons of America. He had been a buffalo hunter, Army Scout, and Pony Express rider, but in 1883, when he created Buffalo Bill's Wild West show, he became immortal. The show reenacted epic battles, gunfights, and the iconic cowboys and Indians imagery. He took the spectacle worldwide, from Chicago to Paris, from open plains to royal palaces, transforming the Wild West into global entertainment. He even hired Sitting Bull to perform. It sparked controversy. It drew headlines. It built an entire industry around the cowboy mythos. Buffalo Bill didn't just tell stories. He built an era and walked into the spotlight as part of it. Number 14, Chief Joseph. I will fight no more forever. From now on, I will speak only the truth. I am tired. My heart is broken. Those words turned Chief Joseph from a warrior into a symbol of humanity in the middle of a historic storm. His real name was Hinma Tuyalatkekt, leader of the Nez Perce, born around 1840 in what is now Oregon. When the U.S. government forced his people to leave their homeland, Joseph led over 700 men, women, and children on a 2,000-kilometer journey across mountains and snow, seeking freedom in Canada. They nearly made it. But just days from the border, U.S. troops surrounded them. Exhausted, Joseph surrendered. Though imprisoned afterward, he was respected by his own people and even by those who once called him a rebel. He lost a war, but won the respect of humanity with dignity and words that never needed a gun. Number 15, Kit Carson. Riding through deserts and forests, leading dreamers chasing the American promise. Kit Carson didn't need many words. Others would write them for him, in books, newspapers, and legends. Christopher Kit Carson, born in 1809, was one of the most prominent scouts, guides, and frontiersmen in American history. Once a fur trapper, he soon became the trusted guide for expeditions, including those led by John C. Fremont, who helped map the American West. But Carson's legacy didn't end with exploration. He joined military campaigns, including the controversial forced relocation of the Navajo, where he helped burn villages, leading to the tragic Long Walk. He wasn't a villain, but he wasn't innocent either. He was the man carrying America's feet and its gaze toward the horizon. Kit Carson was the spirit of the Wild West, where glory and guilt were always intertwined. Number 16, Quana Parker, half Comanche, half white, part warrior, part captive's son. Quana Parker didn't pick a side. He chose survival and led his people through the collapse of an era. Born around 1845, he was the son of a Comanche chief and a white woman named Cynthia Ann Parker, who had been taken in as a child by the tribe. Quana grew up between worlds and becoming the last Comanche warrior to resist the U.S. Army. After surrendering, he didn't vanish. He adapted. Rising as a powerful leader, Quana wore suits, met with presidents, yet kept his tribal hair and multiple native wives. He promoted education, economic growth, and protected Comanche identity amid modernization. Quana didn't fire the last shot. He stopped the final bullet and turned it into a path forward. History calls him the last warrior, but he defined himself as the first to know how to endure. Number 17, Bat Masterson. A man with a revolver, wide-brimmed hat, and flowing coat stepped into the street. People braced for a shootout, but no, Bat Masterson was just heading to file a sports column in New York. Bartholomew Bat Masterson, born in 1853, was one of the most versatile figures of the Old West. He had been a buffalo hunter, gunman, sheriff, and judge, known for his calm presence, fast draw, and sense of restraint. In Dodge City, he and Wyatt Earp kept peace. Not with brutality, but with backbone. When the cowboy era faded, Bat pivoted. He became a famous sports journalist in New York, a friend of President Theodore Roosevelt, and a sharp-tongued columnist. He witnessed a vanishing world and retold it with words instead of bullets. Bat Masterson didn't die in a duel. He collapsed at his desk, pen in hand. Like the last gunslinger who rewrote legend with ink instead of lead. Number 18. Wild Bill Hickok. The saloon was packed. He sat with his back to the door, something a seasoned gunslinger would never do. When the gunshot rang out, the cards slipped from his hand, a pair of aces and eights, all black. The final hand of Wild Bill Hickok. Born in 1837, real name James Butler Hickok. He had been a detective, scout, sheriff, and above all, a legendary gunfighter. With long hair, a cold stare, and hands fast as lightning, Hickok became the living symbol of law in a lawless time. He had faced dozens of gunfights, taken down notorious criminals, and held order through both nerve and gunpowder. But fame made him a target. August 2, 1876. Deadwood, South Dakota. Hickok was shot in the back by Jack McCall during a poker game. No time to draw, no last words. His legend died with that hand. But the West never forgot. Whoever killed Wild Bill never lived long enough to earn respect. Number 19, Billy the Kid. He once said, "I didn't start this, but if it has to end, it ends with a gun." And he meant it, until the last light flickered inside a barn in Fort Sumner. Born in 1859, real name Henry McCarty, also known as William H. Bonney, Billy the Kid became America's most feared teenage outlaw. He lived only to age 21, but was linked to over 20 killings. Starting with petty theft, Billy rose quickly as a sharpshooter during the Lincoln County War in New Mexico. He escaped jail, evaded lawmen, and fascinated the public with his boyish look and devil-fast draw. Pat Garrett, once a friend, now sheriff, finally shot Billy in the dark. One bullet, no warning. Billy died young. But his legend aged with America. Every time someone speaks of the Old West, the name The Kid drifts back, quietly, like a wide-brimmed ghost in the red dust. Number 20, Belle Starr. She rode like a lady, but carried 2 pistols at her hips. Belle's star didn't shout to be heard. One look, a flick of the whip, and a name that made the West uneasy: the Bandit Queen. Born in 1848, real name Myra Maybelle Shirley, Belle came from a well-off family but quickly stepped off the path. She mingled with outlaws, including members of the James and Younger clans, and married notorious men like Sam Starr. She wasn't the fastest gun, but she knew the law, bent it, and commanded those who fired it. In black velvet, with a broad hat and regal presence, she made herself a symbol of rebellion, with style. In 1889, Belle was ambushed and shot in the back on her way home. The killer remains a mystery. The West called her an outlaw. But in truth, Belle's star simply lived the way women weren't allowed to. Head held high and always in charge. 20 faces, 20 fates. Some died in gunfire. Others faded into silence. Some carried honor. Others carried controversy. But whether they were heroes or outlaws, all of them carved their names into history in a way no one else ever could. If you want to see more legends brought back to life through technology, leave a comment below. And don't forget to subscribe to Colorized History Alive, where history isn't just told, it's seen straight in the eye.